Hi, and welcome to Across the Desk. This week, we're going to go deeper into this Oklahoma focus plan from the Oklahoma House Democratic Caucus right here on Across the Desk. Now, the Oklahoma House Democratic Party has put together a plan called Oklahoma Focused. The main goals of Oklahoma Focused is for more transparency and trustworthiness of government, while also using that power of government to increase our quality of life of the average Oklahoma citizen. Now, these goals are split off into four groups that they concentrate on. First is jobs and economy, then we have health care and then education and criminal justice reform. Now, going through the points here, each one, the first up, we talk about jobs and the economy. One of the things the House Democratic Caucus wants to focus on with jobs and economy is minimum wage. Most Democrats in the national level want to see a $15 an hour minimum wage. Now, typically, someone will work about 2,000 hours a year, so you can easily calculate that. That'll cost a business about $30,000 a year to pay for that employee. That's really not a lot in the scheme of things when it comes to the finances and the machinations of what a business does. 30 grand a year for an employee, it's probably not too horribly awful. And your payroll is probably going to be a business's biggest expense. It just is. It always is, because labor's expensive. It just is. Sweat equity, you got to pay for it. And this is going to ensure that there's a fair wage, because it's really not right when teachers have to go sell blood to pay for food and rent, and mega billionaires like Harold Hamm and the Walton family get to have helipads and nice beachfront private islands while their workers get on our welfare rolls. Now, another thing about it is workplace safety and health. We want to make sure that those that do give out their labor are doing it in a safe manner, and that the businesses that hire them are making sure that their employees are doing their job safely and that they're being safe. This increases all kinds of quality of life for everyone. If we have less workplace injury, well, one, we have less people in our court systems, less workman's comp to have to worry about, and it improves our quality of life. We have less people in the hospital, so we have more beds available to everybody else. And those people are productive because they're not injured and they're still working. Another thing in this Oklahoma focus plan when it comes to jobs and economy is reform the state's tax structure. Now, one thing we have is a progressive tax system. Now, a lot of people hear that word progressive and think, ooh, boogeyman word. But really what that means is we have a system where it's progressive. In other words, we want you to invest in our community. We want you to invest in your own business. So we have tax policy in place to incentivize certain types of investment into your business, into growing your business and helping the community. Because see, you get a tax break for hiring individuals of certain aspects. So there's actually tax breaks for that stuff to incentivize a business to want to invest. And that's how our tax system also works, because hey, you get to take off deductions based on your expenses. So if you have certain types of expenses, you get to take that off of your taxes. Basically, you get to take that off your tax liability. So there's a few things in this Oklahoma focus plan when it comes to education that the Democrats really want to focus on. One is ensuring safety, health, and a proper environment for our children to learn in. A nice, safe environment. Limiting bullying, limiting racism, and any kind of stereotyping, and really limit those things so that kids don't have to be stressed out about their social situations or somebody caring about the way they look or the way they think. And they can go there and they can learn in an environment that's conducive for learning, so they don't have to worry about anything else. Because really, an educated population is one that makes money and one that is able to make good decisions on our state and able to contribute. It just helps out in a lot of ways when we have a proper education system here, and one that's safe for our kids to go to school in. Another thing I want to focus on is keeping the dollars in public schools. We have so many things. There's a bill right now, and there's things that our Governor Stitt has said about taking money from public schools and giving them to private schools. He gave $10 million of COVID funds to the private schools that were supposed to go to public, and that really hurts when they do that. Of course, that's exactly the plan of Republicans. So this is kind of a counter to that plan. We want to focus on keeping public dollars public and keeping them in the public schools, not to some private charter. Now the other thing we want to do is meaningful testing. So the testing we have, we want to make sure it's actually focused. We want to make sure that it's actually statistically viable. In other words, we want to be able to use that testing data, not just to point fingers or to do a gotcha thing or to say, yeah, you know, our way is better than yours because we manipulated this testing. We actually want it to mean something. Like, hey, we're going to take this testing and we're actually going to use it to better what we're doing and improve the lives and the quality of life of the citizens of Oklahoma. The other thing we want to mention when it comes to the education is increasing the charter school oversight. Like I was saying with Epic, they're so large, they're so big, they get so much of our money that we can't get rid of them. And we're having a hard time overseeing them because of this influence and all the money they're getting. And not only that, now they got all this money, they're able to buy PR firms, they're able to hire media companies to do all kinds of stuff. And so that's what we got. We got this really huge monster, and they're trying to just ramrod over everything, and you can see the ugliness in it. You see it. And so then, and they know they're being ugly. If they didn't know they weren't being ugly, they wouldn't have a PR firm to make them look so nice. Criminal justice reform. Now, we talked about this when we discussed this with Representative Colin Walkie last week, because he's the one who's kind of in charge of putting together the criminal justice reform package that we got here. And what basically the Democrats want to focus on, and our policy position in contrast to what conservatives want, we talk about things like ending the cash bail system. Just like Colin Walkie said last week, cash bail, if you got the money, you're out on bail, you're probably going to be able to see your lawyer when you want, you're probably going to be able to get together a lot of stuff and do a lot more things and be able to communicate a lot easier if you got the money. And you're probably going to be able to get off a lot easier if you got the money too, as opposed to somebody who's poor, who can't pay bail, who doesn't have the assets to put up against a bond, and they'll have to sit in jail. Another point that they talk about is reforming mandatory minimum sentences. So we have like things like the 3 strikes rule and you're outlaw. Well, you know, these minimum mandatory sentences, they're really long. Sometimes they're 3 times as long as the recommended sentence for the crime that was committed. And all it does is put money in the pocket of the private prison industry. Puts more of our Oklahoma citizens in an incarcerated place to where they can't produce for society or anything else. And then when they get out, they're behind the 8 ball in a lot of ways. We even talk about things. I've seen a report from NPR on how when people get out of prison, they lack an ID to do anything. They can't even get an ID in some cases. It's really hard for them. So thinking of different ways, some states already do, where they help the incarcerated person upon their release get set up in things like getting an ID, basic things like that. I mean, you can hardly get a ride without one, or anything else. You can't get a bank account. You can't do anything. You can't even hardly get a job without any kind of ID. You can't hardly do anything. So that's kind of one thing that they're focusing on here. Another thing is fully funding courts and district attorneys, because right now those district attorneys, the court system, and just about everything else that's involved is paid for by fees and fines from those people that have been deemed to be criminals. And those that have been convicted, or even on, whatever else, even if they didn't admit guilt. So basically, this is how they're being funded. District attorneys are funded by how many people they can put away. Another thing they wanted to do was stop dangerous policing practices. Putting your knee on the neck of someone until their blood flow stops through their brain and killing them is not really a good police practice. It's not. It's dangerous. Not only that, people got to think. I don't understand how people in charge of law enforcement don't think about things like will of the people. The reason why they have the power they have is really through the will of the people. And those people want people to be accountable, and they want good policing. Yeah, we want to be safe. We don't want people robbing us. We don't want people threatening us. We don't want that. And we do want people to police, but we want it done right. We want it to where we can trust them, where we can see them at an ice cream social and we can actually say, hey, Fred, how's it going? And he knows me by name. He doesn't know me by name because he researched and investigated me to know who I was, where I live, who my grandma's maiden name is. Not that, because see, that's what people are scared of with the police. They've gotten so much militarized, so secretive in a lot of ways, and almost like playing spy games that people don't trust them anymore. And there you go. The Oklahoma House Democratic Caucus focusing on our criminal justice here in Oklahoma, how to make it better, give us a better quality of life for everyone involved, those that are criminals, that are getting out, that have been reformed, and those of us citizens that aren't, by knowing that we're going to have proper policing practices that'll keep us safe. And not just keep us safe from the bad people, but keep us safe from the police themselves who are trying to protect us from those bad people. Now, the last point they have on this Oklahoma Focus Plan from the Oklahoma House Democratic Caucus is health care. And the first thing they have on here is mental health and substance abuse services. This could go a long way to the quality of life of the average citizen in Oklahoma. Just think about it. If we all had good mental health, then this would alleviate probably half to 2/3 of the incarcerations and the involvement of law enforcement that we have today. So we're saving society there by providing the services, keeping reactivism going, and we keep the police services and everything else having to gum up the works with all these mental health issues that we have in the state. Not only that, it provides for a productive workforce. The next point is women and infant mortality rates when it comes to pregnancy issues. Here in Oklahoma, Stitt likes to think that we want to be a top 10 state, and we're going to be, and in some areas we do pretty good. Like, hey, the COVID rollout, we actually did a really good job with that. And per capita, yeah, we're a top 10 state when it comes to administering the COVID vaccine. That's great. We ought to give accolades where they're due, and we ought to do that. But here we are, again, with something that's easily fixed, and something that is in place here due to some draconian, really hardcore, strict conservative rules and laws they passed, and we have some of the lowest health outcomes for women and infants than anywhere in the United States of America. We're bottom 10 on the list when it comes to this. So this is something we can really get behind and really focus on in the Oklahoma Focus Plan by the Oklahoma House Democratic Caucus. Now, the last thing on their health care issues is the affordability of prescription drugs and just medical care in general. You got to think about it. This is real expensive, and a lot of people, they go broke just from medical bills. I've seen people lose their house, their cars, whole retirement plans that they put together for years, just giving that to the medical industry because they're fleecing people right and freaking left over medical bills. And it's so unethical. It is. We need to get a control on these costs. We need to find a way that we can make it affordable for the average Oklahoman, just the average American alone. They really fleece us here, and they really game the system. So getting a handle on the cost of health care and making sure prescriptions and health care in general is affordable to the general populace, again, goes to a quality of life issue that Democrats and liberals can get behind and champion. I hope you've enjoyed the show today. I hope you've gotten more out of what this Oklahoma Democratic Caucus plan is, their Oklahoma Focus Plan. I hope you have gotten a chance to understand it more. Maybe you can go research it yourself, and maybe you can find points where you can get behind and even help them out in some ways to move this agenda forward. Anyway, This is Across the Desk with Kit Fairchild, and we'll see you next week.